Aloha, inspired moneymaker. Thanks for tuning in. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back to Inspired Money, where money meets meaning. I'm your host, Andy Wong, aka Advisor Andy. What do you think about when I say family and finances? Let's be honest. Some of the hardest conversations we'll ever have about money are not with your advisors, your accountants, or business partners. They're with the people we love most. Parents, children, siblings, spouses, especially in blended families. Money shows up in these relationships loaded with emotion, history, expectations. And sometimes we want to protect the relationship, but ironically, avoiding these conversations is what often creates the biggest problems later on. In today's Inspired Money live stream podcast, we're diving into the real-world financial conversations families struggle with every day. Not the theoretical kind, but the practical, emotional, and sometimes uncomfortable moments that shape financial outcomes across generations. How do you begin talking to aging parents about their finances without sounding intrusive? What happens when family loans blur lines between generosity and resentment? How do you support adult children without putting your own retirement at risk? And when wealth, heirlooms, or legacy planning, when they enter the picture, how do families preserve relationships, not just assets? This episode is about preparation, communication, and structure, but also empathy, psychology, and perspective. Because successful financial planning inside families isn't just about spreadsheets and legal documents. It's about trust, expectations, and understanding what money represents to each person involved. To help us unpack this, we're going to be joined by an outstanding panel of experts who bring a unique lens to family financial dynamics, from psychology, of advice and behavior, to multi-generational financial education, to real-life strategies families can implement right away. So whether you're navigating conversations with parents, supporting your kids, or planning your own legacy, this is going to be a thoughtful, practical, and deeply human discussion. And we've talked about sandwich generation before. I feel like I am living and breathing that right now. I have one parent who is in a physical rehab facility, and I have a child at home with a stomach bug. So anything can happen today. Before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by my family-owned investment firm, Runnymede Capital Management. At Runnymede, we believe smart investing starts with clarity. Before you chase returns, whether in stocks, alternatives, or any opportunity, it's important to understand how each piece fits into your overall financial life. That's why we created a free 3-minute financial plan. It's a fast, practical way to see where you stand today and what areas may need attention next. No jargon, no pressure, just a clear snapshot of your finances and priorities. If you're interested in doing that, you can go to inspiredmoney.fm/getplan. That's inspiredmoney.fm I can't even say it. Inspiredmoney.fm/getplan. Runnymede Capital Management. Plan well, invest wisely, and worry less. Now let's bring in our guests. First, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Moira Somers, her first time here. Moira is a psychologist, family wealth consultant, and executive coach who specializes in the psychology of money, advising individuals, families, and institutions around the world. She's the international best-selling author of Advice That Sticks, a faculty member at the Ultra High Net Worth Institute and Sudden Money Institute, and she is a leading voice on why financial advice succeeds or fails at the human level. She also serves as co-founder and chief learning officer at Blackwood Family Enterprise Services. Moira, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next, we're joined by Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, also known as the Money Coach. Lynnette is the founder of the Financial Influencer Network and a nationally recognized personal finance expert. She's the author of 16 books, I think. I have a hard time counting that high. Including the New York Times bestseller Zero Debt and her latest release, Bounce Back, The Ultimate Guide to Financial Resilience. A former CNBC commentator and Wall Street Journal reporter with more than 1,000 television appearances, Lynnette's work on helping families and organizations, she helps them to build practical multi-generational financial confidence. Lynnette, welcome back.
Thank you, Andy. So great to join you again.
And this episode could be interesting because we're hoping to have a third panelist, travel permitting. I think she's on a plane today. I don't know if her plane was early or late, but that is Bobbi Rebell. Bobbi is a CFP professional, founder of Financial Wellness Strategies, and author of the book, Launching Financial Grownups, the go-to guide for helping almost adult kids become money smart. She's a former global business news anchor at Thomson Reuters and a frequent media expert quoted by outlets including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and CNBC. Bobbi brings deep expertise at the intersection of money, parenting, and real-life decision-making. If she makes it back in time, we're going to be excited to have her join the conversation as well. Otherwise, we will have extra space to expand on our discussion. Now that you've met the panel, let's get into the conversations many families avoid but should not. Let's jump into segment one.
Talking to aging parents about money is hard, but not talking is worse. Start with peace of mind. Use I statements. I've been organizing my own documents, and I'd feel better knowing where yours are too. Begin with healthcare. Ask if they've named a proxy, documented their wishes, and where those papers are stored. Then move to logistics. The goal isn't control, it's organization. Build a family financial map. Legal documents, account lists, insurance policies, and key contacts. Ask where things are kept, not how much they have. Focus on clarity, not criticism. Listen more than you speak. This is not a one-time talk, it's a process. Framing it as mutual planning, not intervention, keeps the door open. Done right, this conversation builds trust, reduces future stress, and ensures everyone knows what to do when it matters most.
Moira, when adult children try to talk money with aging parents, the resistance is often emotional, not financial. What's really happening psychologically in that moment?
You know, it's often a reflection of the shifting power dynamics, what can feel like power dynamics about who's in control and why am I the one that's being scrutinized when I'm usually the scrutineer. So it's just a reflection of where we are in life's journey. All of us need to be really working hard to make sure that we are both developing skills to be gracious in initiating those conversations if we're the ones, if we are in that sandwich generation, but also to be gracious in inviting those conversations with our adult children. There are 3 or 4 conversations that I work really hard to try and get families out ahead of long before they're upon them. And sometimes adult children can be involved in that. Sometimes it needs to be an outside party like a financial advisor. But really it's on all of us to cultivate that humility that sometimes our runway is not as infinite as we would like to pretend it is.
That is certainly the truth. Lynnette, for families who've avoided money talk for decades, what's the lowest stress entry point to start building a financial or a family financial map?
Well, I'm not sure that there is one sort of low stress barrier or access point that would certainly be applicable to all, because I do think that it matters how much wealth a family has, how many kids are involved, what the sort of family dynamics have been, what level of communication has previously existed. But certainly I do think that you pointed out some sort of do's and don'ts at the opening that can be helpful. You talked about framing statements around sort of I statements, like I would feel better knowing about where documents are located. You talked about the need for clarity and organization, and the way in which people should try to avoid sort of finger pointing or blaming or seeming as if they were performing, as you said, an intervention, which can make things not go well in most families. So the topics themselves may be something as simple as, I'm looking at my own retirement planning efforts and my own estate planning documents, if you're talking, say, to your aging parents. And I want to make sure that I'm clear about, what your goals are, what your expectations, what you'd like to happen, or where your important documents are kept. And I just think that inviting that as a reference point in a conversation could be good, again, without saying how much money you have, who's getting what kind of thing, is a more, let's say, elegant or more perhaps seamless approach that would be better received.
Moira, you referenced the 3 critical conversations that you'd like clients to have. Can you elaborate on one? What's a good starting point for everyone?
I was on the edge of my seat when she said that.
Right.
So I was like, tell me what those 3 are, because that's what we all need to know.
Yeah, there are probably 4 or 5, but I love what you put in the introduction and what Lynnette just picked up on. What are some of the things that we are all facing commonly right now? And so that organizational, I'm trying to organize, how have you guys organized it? That's a really easy entry point. But one of the key conversations to be having, again, across the lifespan is, what have you encountered recently in terms of attempts to scam you? In my own life, we've had a 15-year-old son who was scammed out of some sneakers on a Facebook marketplace scam. And then, this week I've had the Securities Exchange Commission and the pastor from our church call about 2 elders who have been bilked out of everything they own. And so across the lifespan, and I'm sure everybody on this call can probably pick up their phone or their email and look at a bunch of scam texts. So one really productive conversation to have is, so what's circulating out there this month, mom and dad, son and daughter? What do we need to know about? But the other conversations that we try to have in advance are, how will I know when it's time to accept financial help? And what could that look like? How will I know when it's time to accept help in organizing the household, in running the household, like doing the chores, cleaning, yard work? How will I know when it's time to move? And then the big one, how will I know when it's time to stop driving? You think the money conversation is hard. Let me tell you, as a neuropsychologist, where I've had to tell people they can't drive anymore, the money conversation doesn't hold a candle to the driving one. Those are 4 big conversations. And if you have them, a decade at least in advance, sometimes 2 decades, and you get everybody to agree calmly when the wolf isn't at your door. Well, have you ever known anybody who waited too long? Have you ever seen that? What would a good plan look like? It's so much lovelier to have those conversations. You can be thoughtful and caring and have, be candid about how hard it might be to have somebody look over your finances with you. And then to say, so what would it look like? Well, maybe when we turn 60, that might be a great time to start simplifying things like, do we really need 7 credit cards? Is that part of the scam proofing? Is that part of the simplifying? And so these things start to weave together just naturally because of family conversations.
Lynnette, anything to add?
Oh boy, a lot. She brought up the car keys. So my parents are 82 and 83 years old. My parents are divorced. My mom is the one who is 82. She lives by herself in Georgia. My dad has remarried, and he lives with his wife. He's 83. So just for quick context, I live in Texas. And I have two sisters who also live in Georgia. But my mom had knee replacement surgery on her left knee in 2024. She came out to Houston, Texas, where we live, and stayed with my husband and I for about 5 months. She got her surgery, she rehabbed with us, and then she went back to Georgia. Then she had, in 2025, her right knee replaced. And she came out here again, and she spent some months with us, and then she went back to Georgia. So when I went back to Georgia, of course, we took her back both times. But when I went back, we were working with her on her household, her finances, and yes, just the day-to-day practical things in her life, including her driving. And she will not mind me saying this, because I absolutely said it to everybody in my family, to my sisters out there, et cetera. And my mom knows the extent to which we talk about these kinds of issues. Honestly, her driving scared me, but I realized that she was driving so far on a very routine basis, because she was going to a certain supermarket chain that has, very healthy food, something that she wanted to do. But I said, wow, you're putting yourself at risk being on the road for like 45 minutes to an hour just to get to the grocery store of your choice. So we did have to have some, kind of uncomfortable conversations, because I said, Mom, this is a risk factor. We're watching you physically. We want to make sure, you've rehabbed, and we don't want any falls. We don't want any accidents of any kind. She does still drive. And the resolution was that we did a lot of research. We tried to find someplace closer that has the things that she wants. And she was actually right. There was no other place that had the foods and the kosher and the things that she wanted. But we did everything from deliveries to some substitutions that still gave her the control, still gave her say-so over what she wanted to do, which is to have her independence and to be able to be out. But all of that showed me that there were, a multitude of things going on. One is that it wasn't just an issue about control or financial decision-making or judgment or things of that nature. It was also about her as an 82-year-old woman, the things that were important to her time-wise. Like for her, to me, it's just like unthinkable to go, drive 45 minutes or an hour to get to the grocery store. But because she's retired and she has more time on her hands, obviously, for her, it was like, this is filling the time. This is just part of me passing the time. And so it helped me to see things through a different lens. We talk about the personal and personal finances. We talk about understanding, kind of meeting people where they are. But it did give me a greater appreciation for the fact that life has slowed down for her. She wants it that way and she likes it that way. But that this was part of her sort of enjoyment in the process, if you will. So I just think that it's important to be sensitive to a variety of needs that people may have, that may be spoken or unspoken, that may be personal, financial, emotional, or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. So to be thinking about, I would just challenge, Andy and Lynnette and myself, if we were to write down right now for our children, or for the people in our lives, how would we ideally like to make that decision about when to know, how to know if it's time to stop driving, how to know when to know if it's time to leave the home that we are so in love with, how to know when to know that it's time to let somebody else look over our shoulder, or indeed to assign financial oversight. To do it now, to write down our thoughts now, when it's not right upon us, and to say, this is how I've been thinking about it. And it just allows you to enter these conversations with other people with a kind of, I never thought of that, right? Like the things Lynnette hadn't thought of. And now that you have thought of it, now that you have been made aware of it, how does that influence things? Like, do you need an outside party? Do you need to rejig your finances? Do you need more supports? Do you need more empathy? What is it that might be required here?
Thank you for that. How to know when to know. Great advice. Before we move on to the next segment, just one quick action item for everyone. Since Moira talked about scams and potential fraud, if you have aging parents, get the passcode or password to their phone, because your phone becomes such an important way to confirm your identity, and everything goes back to email and phone. So if you can get an email password and a phone password, just something that is good to have for the children, and a good first conversation to open up sort of this continuum of when the power dynamic could change, when the tables turn and kids could be assisting to take care of their parents. Let's move on to segment two.
Loaning money to family can help or hurt. Before you say yes, assess 3 things. Can you afford it? Should you lend it? Will they repay it? If the answer is still yes, formalize the deal. A promissory note is non-negotiable. It should include the loan amount, repayment terms, an interest rate at or above the IRS's applicable federal rate, and consequences for default. Skipping this step can trigger unintended tax issues. Set a clear schedule and track payments. Treat it like a business agreement, not a handshake. This protects both sides. If hardship hits, build flexibility into the contract, like a pause or renegotiation clause. Formality isn't about mistrust. It's how you protect relationships from resentment. The goal is clarity, not control. Done right, structure strengthens trust and keeps money from breaking family bonds.
Lynnette, what are your thoughts on a family loan? Like, when a family loan goes bad, what determines whether the relationship survives or fractures?
Well, unfortunately, all too often we've seen family loans, and frankly, loans to friends and others also, they do in fact go south. And so I think that, again, the nature of the relationship matters. The previous dynamic that was in play matters. What I found in my own experience coaching individuals, couples, and families, my writings and interviewing people, et cetera, is that for the most part, the idea that one sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication or one bad thing that happened when a loan was in play is kind of a misconception of reality and of what has happened in a given relationship. For example, if someone is loaning, say, a brother, a cousin, a nephew, whatever, money, and you pose the question in your intro there, can you afford it? Will they repay, essentially? It's not at all unreasonable, if you are so inclined and can't afford to loan money, it's not at all unreasonable to think, okay, are they likely to repay? What's the best indication if someone is likely to repay? It's, have they repaid others, other debts that they owe? That's sort of part of the underpinning, for example, of the entire credit scoring world, right? Where your payment track record, your history of paying obligations that you kind of signed on the dotted line and said you would repay, that's 35%, for example, of your credit score. So I'm not saying we, become like, the banks of the world and the credit unions and put people through a rigorous credit scoring system. But I am saying that those kind of filters and that kind of analysis is applicable here. So if you know your cousin, your nephew, your, whoever you're thinking about loaning money to has had a bad track record, has already not paid you back or somebody else back, or has been inconsistent in their financial dealings, then I think that part of what people need to do before they consider, whether or not to extend loans is to be clear-eyed and honest, and to kind of take off the rose-colored glasses, right? So on the one hand, what's the person's track record been? Is a factor to consider. The other factor to consider, though, is how is it that you would deal with the non-payment issue? Again, not just in financial terms. Can you afford to lose the money? Can you afford to give it up if they don't pay? But what would that mean for the relationship? Would it be an uncomfortable, dinner at, Thanksgiving? Would you have resentment? Would the person feel, indebted to you in some other way, not just financially, but emotionally sort of under your thumb because they didn't pay back as agreed? And if you're willing to change the dynamics of the relationship or potentially have the relationship impacted, then I think you should, you would take that information into account. But the truth is that most people who say this person didn't pay me back, they sort of had signals. They had the red flags. And again, not to say that unexpected things can happen. And I think it was a good point that you referenced in your intro there to sort of consider, like, should you have a clause in there to kind of deal with the unexpected, or how would we handle it if the terms are not met, or if a loan is not paid as agreed? Most families don't document their loans in that way, let alone charge the interest at the IRS approved of rate that you referenced, and so forth.
Moira, you work with clients whose careers have taken off and their wealth has grown. How do you advise them through, like, the possibility of a gift or a loan within a family?
Yeah, everybody in that situation talks about how they want to be helpful and they want to make sure that things don't get weird because of the generosity or the perceived lack of generosity. It's like, if there's something money isn't, it sure isn't neutral. And so the loan and the gift situation falls under that category of things that can make things weird. That being said, family generosity, family financial support is what's making it possible for people to go to university. It's what's making it possible for people to start businesses and to get down payments on homes. So it's a beautiful thing, and it's always been that way. So where it can go wrong, frankly, the thing that I'm most concerned about, and this goes across the income, across the wealth spectrum, from people who earn next to nothing, from people who are very, very wealthy, is when loans are given to people who are financially unstable because they don't have the basics of financial literacy. They don't know how to make their ends meet. They don't know how to live within their means, regardless of what those means might be. And so sometimes parents will give loans, for example, to pay off a line of credit or pay off a credit card because people are paying ridiculous interest. And the unspoken assumption is, now that I've paid this off, you are expected to live within your means. But there's not any lesson in how to do that or any support in how to do that. And so the resentment grows, and that's the thing that's really hard to overcome. So to be thinking about the context in which this loan is being given, and do people need something even more than they need money? Do they need access to credit counseling? Do they need access to growing financial literacy, some way of stabilizing their financial lives? Do they need access to career counseling so that they can be earning better, for example? These are some of the things to consider, rather than just the knee-jerk response to say yes to a request for money.
One of the things that I found in talking to families where loans have been extended is the party that's providing the loan often feels either A, some level of guilt, or B, they have a huge level of fear in the giving. And the fear is that if I don't help them, who will? The fear is the worst case scenario is going to happen to this person if I don't provide them with this loan or this cash. And the fear is that this person is coming to me. They're saying that they, need the money to pay their mortgage. They need the money to pay their car note. They need the money to pay for their kids' tuition. They need whatever they're saying that they need the money for. And if I don't, I'm the lender of last resort. That's how they feel, as if they are like the person has no other options or no other choices, and that they come to them kind of, often 11th hour in a crisis or a time of need. Now, it's not always the case. Some people, kind of plan out and think ahead. But for the person who's providing the loan, sometimes I ask them to check that assumption, to consider whether or not their assumption that you're the lender of last resort, whether that actually is something that they, I won't say secretly like, but that in some ways is appealing to them. Because for some people, it is true that sort of having the power of the purse emotionally brings up some things. They can feel like the savior. They can be the sort of white knight who comes in and who is the person rescuing, even if it has a certain level of discomfort or they're dismayed about it. Again, for some people, that being in that position reinforces something within them. And so I do try to sometimes ask people to consider what would happen if you said no. What would happen if you asked them to come up with another solution or another strategy? What would happen if you asked them, let's sit down and talk about 3 other options, right? So if someone's coming to you saying, I need money for X, Y, or Z, if you were to brainstorm with them and say, here are some options that you can create what you need for yourself, or here's how you can learn to create what you need or to access what you need without the giver, so to speak, being involved in sort of, providing what the person is asking for. It's like the concept of teaching a man how to fish, as opposed to giving him the fish. And so I do think that sometimes people who are being asked to give, it could be even giving things like their name and their credit by co-signing for things, that sometimes you have to ask them what they're getting out of it. It conjures up a lot of stuff, certainly. But sometimes I absolutely have had people say that, yeah, like I didn't realize how much I was doing that. And I was caught up in a cycle of feeling like I'm kind of the savior and I'm the last resort here.
We're going to go on to segment 3.
When adult children return home, support without structure becomes a liability for you and for them. Start by shifting the dynamic. You're not a fallback, you're a launch pad. Begin with a written launch plan. Define rent, even if symbolic. Use a parent-child rental agreement to reinforce responsibility. Require contributions, chores, job applications, savings goals. Set a clear exit timeline with progress check-ins. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. Financial enablement removes pressure but delays growth. Empowerment teaches discipline and builds independence. Don't fund adulthood without accountability. Keep boundaries firm around money, space, and expectations. Your retirement goals matter too. Structure replaces guesswork, and accountability builds momentum. Done right, you're not just offering shelter. You're helping an adult child move forward with purpose and independence.
Moira, in today's economy, how do we distinguish between helping kids versus stalling their adulthood?
Great question. I think part of people have lived in multi-generational homes throughout most of family history. So I think, especially in today's economy, it's really important that we not somehow construe a child coming back home as indication of failure to launch or of some sort of, you did this wrong, that you're here. It's wonderful to have a place to come back to. What isn't wonderful is the way that some people come back, which is as though they were 10 years old again. So the notion of you're coming back as a member of the household who's expected to make contributions, and those contributions may well be financial, and they will need to go beyond financial. This is especially important for parents who may be at a very busy time in their career, and who just can't pretend that they've got space, time, and energy to pick up extra work in the household. And it's also really important for parents who may be financially constrained. But I think the real serious category of mistake to make is to just allow somebody to come back in with no expectations for contribution. What is that preparing the individual for? I think it can become an incredible time of family growth, to meet your child anew as the emerging adult that they're becoming, or maybe it's way beyond emerging adulthood. But it can work beautifully well when everybody understands they've got contributions to make.
Yeah, so I hear that the need to have the discussions about expectation is very important. Lynnette, many parents feel guilty charging their kids rent. What's your advice there, and how do they close that guilt gap?
I think that most parents who do feel guilty do so for a couple of reasons. One is they wonder, like, did I do enough? Did I prepare my child adequately? Why are they, quote unquote, a boomerang kid? Why did they have to move back in? And I think Maura raises a great point, which is that we shouldn't look at it as a failure or as something that was lacking necessarily in a child or in the parenting dynamic, et cetera, because that's absolutely not always the case. So sometimes it is, but very often it frankly isn't. So I think the way to kind of assuage some of the guilt on the parts of the parents is twofold. One is to recognize that, as you mentioned in your opening, what you're really trying to do is prepare your children for independence. This is not about punishing them. So it does not serve an adult at any age, mid-20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond, to live in a household free of charge with no expectations or rules, no guidelines around what you will contribute financially or non-financially, and then expect that, okay, but in 3 months' time, in 12 months' time, you'll be out in the world and you'll be paying rent on your own. You'll do all of the things necessary to financially sustain yourself because you've not given them any training to do so. Just like in the mortgage business, if you want to get a house loan, there's this concept called payment shock. And essentially, lenders look at, if you're a renter, how much rent are you paying right now? If you're paying $1,500 a month and your mortgage payment you get a loan and your mortgage payment would be, say, $2,000 a month, they're like, okay, that's not too much payment shock. But if your mortgage payment will go to $3,000, now you've doubled the housing payment that you're accustomed to affording. So banks are going to be more leery about lending you money. That would mean a $3,000 a month home note. So likewise, parents can prepare their adult children against payment shock by saying, and not feeling guilty about it, by saying this number that I'm making you pay is closer or somewhat in line with half of what 70%, 30%, something about what you'd have to pay in the real world on your own. And if that's the goal to move them towards that, you might as well let them get accustomed to doing that right now.
There's lots of times when parents don't need the money. If they need the money, that's we're having a whole different conversation then. If they don't need the money, sometimes they say, then, really, why am I doing this? But it is exactly for the reasons that Lynnette talked about. And what you can do, of course, is to set the money aside for against when they move out. If you want to do that, you can decide on a charity that you will give it to. But there is something very, very important about having people understand what it costs to live. And if coming back home becomes an excuse for them to go financially unconscious, that is not a good scenario.
Love the idea of managing expectations on both sides and keeping things moving forward. You cannot regress just because a child's coming home that your child is suddenly 10 years old again. You have to ensure that that is not the case. Great advice. Let's move on to segment 4.
Settling an estate isn't just legal, it's emotional. Wills distribute assets, but they don't distribute meaning. That's where conflict often begins. Heirlooms carry memory, identity, and unspoken history. To reduce damage, lead with process. Inventory personal property, circulate photos, and ask each sibling to create a wants list. When overlaps occur, use structure, draft orders, or a point-based system. Keep the executor neutral and the process transparent. When tensions rise, ask why, not just what. Why does this matter to you? Invites understanding where arguments usually harden. Use a personal property memorandum when available, and mediation when needed. Done well, this process preserves more than possessions. It protects relationships and helps families move through loss without lasting fractures.
Ooh, a nice watch. Moira, when siblings fight over heirlooms, what are they really fighting for emotionally?
Sometimes they are really just fighting over the heirloom, but often, of course, they're fighting over who was loved more. What was that? What was the meaning of that thing? What were the memories attached to that thing? Can I actually go back and have a redo on my childhood or on my relationship with that person? Can I at least prove that I'm worth more than you are in this relationship? So it just, we just like we sometimes ask money to do things that it was never ever equipped to do, so too do we ask heirlooms and possessions to do things that they were never capable of doing. So it really is one of the most important gifts that we can leave is to have, pre-discuss, lay things out really well, and be super, super careful in your choice of executor. That is one tough role to ask somebody to play. It usually goes to the person in the family who's considered to be the most financially competent. It may not go to the person who is the most psychologically equipped to handle the role. And if you don't set it up well for that executor in terms of laying out expectations well in advance, doing great documentation, then it can be tied up for years and years. And again, not a gift to anybody.
Lynnette, should families consider gifting heirlooms while still living?
I absolutely think that's a great idea. We've done it in our own family, as a matter of fact. So my husband was the recipient of he inherited a home from his great aunt Helena many years ago. He inherited a lot of jewelry from her, fur coats, etc. His mom unfortunately passed away in 2018, and she left to me all of her jewelry, etc. Our daughter, our 20-year-old, our youngest daughter, Alexis, recently was home, and Earl said, "Do you want some of these items?" And she did. I was shocked, honestly. She took a fur coat or two, etc. So, but one of the things that, and again, you said we would have very human conversation here, so I'm just sharing anecdotally something that we did in our family. So we have been very open to talk to our 3 young adult children about our estate plan. They know what's in our trust. They know what we've named for each one of them. They're fully aware of the fact that my husband and I are executors of our estate, and depending on who passes first, what's going to happen and all of that. But we've told them the why also, right? And so I do think that sometimes, because we have 3 children, they're 28, 26, and 20, I do think that sometimes parents automatically say a third, or they might distribute their assets in a way that is like, well, this person is doing very, very well. They won't need any money. And they might give more to the lesser earning one or whatever. Whatever the case, whatever someone decides to do, I do think it's important to talk to your family and to explain your rationale, because so often, I've just seen too many hurt feelings and stories where people do think, well, mom loved them more, or dad always gave them the best, or whatever. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with that. So talking to your family now, I think is absolutely appropriate and a good thing. And not only that, but you can, get some assets out of your estate right now, get some tax benefits for doing that. But also you can see how your largesse and your generosity plays out in your lifetime while you're, alive to view it all. So to me, that's the more important thing, is to know that something that you might gift or give now, how that can be utilized, and then how you can watch it and appreciate it in a way that you couldn't, obviously, after your passing.
Okay.
I'm sitting in the center of Canada, just scratching my head thinking, I know what I'd do with the fur coat, but what does somebody in Canada do with the fur coat? One of the...
She's in another state, but yeah, I understand.
Sometimes we talk about the joy of giving with a warm hand rather than a cold hand. So giving while you're still alive, to absolutely see the joy, see what people do. And it's not meant to sort of be an explicit test that the recipient can pass or fail, but it does allow you to see, as a giver, what kinds of decision-making do people, what kinds of decision-making quality is there? Do they see this as kind of fun money that doesn't follow the normal rules of money? Might they need to receive this money in a slightly more structured way, depending on how old they are? These conversations are so critical, and they can be so bonding. They can increase mutual understanding, and at the other side of it, they can prevent wounding that can never be healed after you're gone, because they just didn't know what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I loved while your hand is warm, and even Lynnette's story of seeing or being surprised that her daughter wanted a fur coat. It just opens up more conversation and getting to know each other even better.
Yep.
So welcome those surprises. We're going to bring it home and go to the last segment.
Blended families need more than goodwill. They need a financial structure designed for complexity. Start with transparency. A his, hers, and ours system respects prior commitments while managing shared expenses. When incomes differ, split costs proportionally, not evenly. For co-parenting, use a separate account for child-related expenses to keep boundaries clean and conflict contained. Estate planning matters even more here. A prenuptial agreement defines what remains separate. A qualified terminable interest property trust, also known as a Q-tip trust, can provide for a surviving spouse while preserving inheritance for children from a prior relationship. Update beneficiaries regularly. These steps aren't just paperwork, they're protection. When expectations are explicit, blended families operate with fairness, stability, and long-term confidence.
Lynnette, how do blended families build multi-generational wealth, especially when financial histories are different?
That's a really loaded question, but I think it boils down to talking about values and about obligations and where the two sides can kind of align. So you might say in our family or historically, we've valued education. And so we want to make sure we set aside money for the kids' college or for the grandkids' college fund, that kind of thing. But if there's a previous, set of grandkids or children, et cetera, you might say, but I also have this obligation to pay for their education too. And how do you feel about that? So it's really about communicating, about talking about values, and about honoring and respecting what another party might already have or be committed to.
Moira, what emotional triggers most often derail blended family planning conversations?
Oh, mercy. When you think about how often financial conflicts lead to the breakup of marriages in the first place, or contributed to unhappy family lives, you often have the case that people are coming into second marriages almost feeling a little bit like refugees from the marital landscape where there was a lot of financial pain. One of the things that I've just been so heartened by recently is people who are coming in for premarital counseling because they specifically want to make sure that they're coming into the new relationship with much greater clarity around values and how to have financial peace in the household. There does have to be some papering of this, some legal stuff involved. But it doesn't have to feel like scorched earth, like just these horrible prenups where everybody's going into their sides and trying to get divorced. One of the things that I love doing with couples, whether it's first marriage or blended or families or whatever, is to help create loving prenups, that together we have these conversations, and then they go and they take it to their lawyers to paper it. But really what you need to know is from each other, what matters and why, and how can we make this work to the betterment of us as a couple, but also to the generations following us who really matter to us. How do we protect each other and the rest of the people in our lives?
I'm going to steal that phrase, loving prenups. I love that. And because to me, that's exactly what they're designed to be and should be, loving prenups. That's a great one. Thank you for sharing that, Moira.
That is a great one. And I appreciate Moira's calming voice. I can see the advantage of sitting down with Moira for some of these difficult conversations. Any closing thoughts, Moira or Lynnette?
I would just say that people shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations and to recognize that it won't just be one. There'll be a series of conversations, but you can get through it, and your family will be enriched for it.
Moira?
And my comment is, don't be scared to get help to have those conversations. Sometimes people are really scared, and they might be scared for good reason. Maybe there's been estrangement in their family. Maybe they have had, maybe they've just borne witness to conflict that has caused considerable pain. But there are people, including financial advisors, who can serve as wonderful facilitators There are family enterprise consultants like myself. There are a lot of different people out there, psychotherapists who can help make sure that you can have conclusions that don't feel like Groundhog Day, where it's like, oh, we've talked about this a million times. How do you get to a better place together? That's what you want in family life.
It can certainly help to have a third-party objective facilitator to help those conversations. We're going to end it there as we wrap up today's conversation. One of my biggest takeaways is this: the goal of family money conversations is not perfection, it's progress. So you don't have to solve everything in one sitting. What matters most is creating openness, structure, and shared understanding so that money becomes a tool for support, not a source of stress. And if there's one thing that I'd encourage you to do this week, it's simple. Start one conversation that you've been putting off. It could be asking your parents where key documents are, setting expectations with an adult child, or clarifying a financial boundary. You don't need all the answers. You just need to open the door. Thank you for being a part of this episode of Inspired Money. If today's discussion resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, share it with someone who might benefit. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Find me by searching for Advisor Andy. Inspired Money is powered by me, with Bradley John Eaglefeather producing the live stream and managing the behind-the-scenes edits that keep everything running smoothly. Chad Lawrence brings it all to life with graphics, animation, and post-production polish to give the show its final shine. And a big thank you to our outstanding panel, our duo panel, for carrying the extra weight and sharing their insights and real-world wisdom today. I did hear from Bobbi Rebell, who apologized for not being able to make it. She said the taxi cab back from the airport was going very slowly. She's sorry to have missed. I'll be sure to bring her back at a future date. To learn more about our guests, check out Dr. Moira Somers at moneymindandmeaning.com and explore her best-selling book, Advice That Sticks, where she dives deeper into the psychology behind why financial advice succeeds or fails. You can visit Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, the Money Coach, at lynnettekhalfanicox.com or themoneycoach.net. Be sure to check out her New York Times bestselling book, Zero Debt, and her latest release, Bounce Back, The Ultimate Guide to Financial Resilience. And I did mention the 16 books, so you can build your own library with Lynnette's books. She also leads the Financial Influencer Network, which is doing incredible work around the financial education and empowerment. And a shout out to Bobbi Rebell, who wasn't able to make it today. Be sure to follow all of our guests, explore their work, and continue the conversation beyond today's episode. Moira or Lynnette, anything that you want to plug before we part ways?
No, you've done us justice. So I appreciate it as always, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you, Lynnette and Andy.
Same here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Inspired Moneymaker, for staying with us to the end. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks.